Back to Change Your Perspective, Change Your Awareness, Change Your Life. Dr. Michelina AF here. Hashtag that felon Dr. Trump, coming to talk to you about the final of the 7 deadlies, and that is gluttony. Gluttony is an interesting one because it's really specific. It is really an overindulgence or an over excess in like food or drink. And we have a lot of that. Historically, we've had that when people are wealthy and abundant. What ends up happening, if you think back even to like kings and queens, they're throwing these decadent feasts at the expense of their like taxpayers, the landowners, the people on the property around the castle, etc. Like historically, showing that you can throw a feast is a way of showing your power and your control. And so food, we don't think about food the way we probably should think about food, honestly. Food and drink is it's a way to break bread, quite literally, right? And have camaraderie or companionship. It's a way to show trust, show good faith. It's why, there are always moments where, like, if I'm thinking like feudally here, right? If you invited somebody into your house, it was like, you can trust that nothing's getting poisoned here, you're not going to be taken advantage of here. And it's why, and this is a spoiler, guys, so if you've never watched Game of Thrones, don't listen to this and you want to watch it, I'm going to spoil something big here. It's why the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones was such a big issue, because they completely broke hospitality law. I won't say why or how, but they broke hospitality law, because there is something to when you go into somebody else's space, you expect a certain level of hospitality. And so food and drink is one of those things that has a high symbology that we don't think about because we're always consuming. We're consumers. That's what we do. And so, especially in America, like, we waste so much food. And this is not a PSA about don't waste your food. This is a PSA about overindulgence. Americans are overindulgent. Like, if you go to Europe and you go to America, you can see Europeans are fit and trim. They eat small portions. Americans are not. We are doughy and round, and we eat large portions for cheap amounts of money. You can get a full ass 1,500 calorie meal for $7 if you go to McDonald's. And so we all, I think a little bit in this country, unintentionally have a gluttony problem. We don't mean to have a gluttony problem, but we just are so abundant in this land that it naturally happens. Food and drink is so easy to procure that we don't even think about it. I look around in the grocery store. I'm sure you've heard this, right? Stay on the outskirts of the grocery store because all the processed foods is down the aisles and it's like not good for you. So if you stay on the outskirts of the grocery store, you'll get the necessities that you need and then you can leave. If you've never heard that, you can have that. If you're somebody that goes and traverses up and down the aisles, you probably got a lot of processed food in your cart. It's not very effective. However, all that to say, I look when I'm at the grocery store at the toxins that people put in their carts, the Coca-Colas, the chips, right? All of these processed foods that have like 1,000 ingredients that we can't even pronounce, that we're putting in our bodies. And then we're wondering why we've got all these maladies and why we're sick and why we aren't mentally operating in the way that we, probably can and should. And it's like, because we're putting crap fuel in our bodies. So gluttony is one that if you're not being mindful of in America, you are probably succumbing to accidentally. If you're not being intentional about what you eat in this country, you are probably falling into gluttony without even realizing it. We overindulge in food and drink all the time in this country. Anybody who's an alcoholic is a glutton. They're overindulging in drink. And so we've got a lot of alcoholics in the world. I mean, God, alcohol is so pervasive in almost every culture. Vodka in Russia, beer in Germany, wine in France, all of it in this country, because we just are an amalgamation of everything. So, you can't go into a store without there being alcohol there. And we forget moderation in all things. Moderation in all things. These bodies don't need a lot to sustain optimally. They really don't. And so we all kind of fall a little victim to gluttony. There's also, I noticed in like European families, I had a European best friend growing up, and her family was Polish, and I have an Italian grandmother. I had an Italian grandmother, and there's just this notion to eat. It's like mangia, eat. Like you haven't eaten enough. Even the South too. Now that I'm in the South, when I was at Thanksgiving, it was like, you're not eating enough. You need a second plate. Like you didn't eat enough. There's like 95 courses, and it's like, you need to eat all of it, and so there is something to, especially I think with women, hospitality dictates if you're fed well and you're content, a job has been well done, I have served you, comfort has been given. And so unintentionally, we don't realize that we're pushing this gluttonous idea because we're trying to serve our families, we're trying to serve traditionally the way that we've been served, right? It's like, if I give you this nourishment, I give you this sustenance, I give you this food, I am doing my part to take care of you. And I'm giving you love, And hey, if anybody's ever noticed, this is the thing I really do notice, everything tastes better when somebody else prepares it for you. Like if I make a grilled cheese sandwich, it's pretty decent. If my mom makes a grilled cheese sandwich, it's just better. Like it's just better. Not that she's the better cook, just it's better because my mom made it and she made it for me with love, and I just snack it down, right? There is something to the way that we address emotions with our food, pretty much, I would say almost worldwide, but definitely Europe, definitely in America. But definitely, India, like all these places really, food is a big way that we show our affection, we show our care, we show our taking care of. And so we don't think about food because we take it for granted because we have it. And even sometimes if we don't have it, we're not thinking about anything other than how to get it because we need it to survive, right? So this idea of gluttony and overindulgence of food and drink has a lot to do with our emotions. Our food is very much tied to our emotions. Power and control, love and comfort. I know myself, if I'm not feeling okay, I do a comfort food thing. I will go to a warm beverage. Like that's a comfort for me all the time. Like I was feeling kind of crap the other day, and it's like, I need some ice cream. We do it. We use food as a source of comfort. We use food as a way to show and leverage power and control. We, think about, good one. Think about a wedding. What's one of the three things people always remember? The food. It's like, oh, the food wasn't really good, so the wedding wasn't really good. It's not true. It's not true. But that's what everybody always remembers. Like, oh yeah, that food was so good, right? So they say the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. I think a lot of the times the way to a lot of our hearts is through our stomach, because we speak in food in a lot of really interesting ways, and we overindulge because we don't know how to be moderate, and we don't know how to be disciplined in our food, and also our food is not sourced effectively to serve us in really healthy ways, which we know for sure. That was another thing. I had a friend who I picked up from Europe. He has acid reflux issues. The whole time he was in Europe for 2 weeks, he was in Paris, he was in Germany, he had no issues, no heartburn, no acid reflux, no nothing. He got back here, we went for food, and we live in the South, lots of fried stuff, and literally it was so heavy, he like threw up on the way home. He was like, oh my God, like this food is so different here than it was there. And I'm like, yeah, I know, we should have thought about that, like, sorry. And so like, it's literally just a matter of our food also is heavy. It doesn't always serve us, not always produced the most effectively. So if you're not policing your food intake, nobody's going to do it for you. And this is like a hugely, now it's coming into light. Everybody's kind of getting aware, but this is a huge issue that, people just don't pay attention to at all. So I think that we all have a little bit of gluttony issues when we live in this country, But yes, gluttony is specific in that it is just food and drink. Like you know, lust is maybe sex, but maybe you're lusting for other things too. Lust and promiscuity, if you remember, are two kind of different things. But really, gluttony, if you look up the definition of it, it's just overindulgence of food and drink. Like, that's how serious it is. And that's it's a very narrow 7 deadly, you know, very specific, the most specific, I would say, and the easiest to identify. And, you know, I've seen it. I've seen men just sit on the couch and kick back a 12-pack. And I'm like, that's gluttony. That's what that is. And it leads to sloth, right? When you're a glutton, you're so full you can't move. It leads to sloth. I don't want to do anything. Gluttony and sloth go kind of hand in hand, in the same way that, like, greed and envy might go hand in hand. Lust and envy might go hand in hand. Pride can go under pretty much any of them. So yes, so that wraps up our 7 deadly, our vices. I am so interested which ones kind of resonate more with you. Hopefully it's an insightful way to know your own blocks, your own strongholds, some of the things that might be coming up for you mentally. And if you like what we're doing here on the channel, comment below, hit the bell, subscribe, tell your friends, all those things. And we'll be starting a new series soon, and I can't wait to see you guys on it. See you then.